So, for several weeks now, in fact, we're winding down this series on living in the light next Sunday. We've been exploring, what does that mean? What does it mean to live in the light? Every aspect that we've looked at, whether it was social intelligence, emotional intelligence, body intelligence, the very breath, all have at its core this idea of it's not something that we have to learn necessarily, but it's an awareness that we have to practice. It's already there. We just have to shift our awareness to be more present with it. Hopefully, you, like me, have had glimpses of what it's like to be in this light, this awareness of God's presence in the midst of whatever we might have been engaged in. Certainly, if you head out to nature, it oftentimes will bring this awe-inspiring awareness of just the beauty of this world that we live in and the magnificence that has been created as a result of it. Whether we call that God, whether we call that our own Christ consciousness, whether we call it the divine, whatever name we want to give to it, we want to be able to more and more often be in the midst of it, as you were talking about, to see it through a different lens, to experience it from a different awareness. And we know we're there. Anytime that we are in that experience of oneness, of love, of compassion, of beauty, when we hear something that resonates so deeply as a truth, we, at least for a moment, are being bathed in the very light of God. But the quest really is not just so much to have those glimpses. That's a good place to start, but to live more and more of those moments of our day from that place. The author describes it as bliss. We might see it as a place where fear is not present. We might understand it from this awareness that there is this evolutionary path that has been unfolding long before we walked this earth and will continue to unfold. But the more we can see it, the more we can be a player in bringing it about, what the Bible would describe as that kingdom of heaven here on earth. One that allows us to live from that place of solution rather than that place of problem. In our humanness, we can see problems pretty clearly, but we are really being challenged right now to not necessarily focus on that, but focus on what would bring more light. Jesus described this place of being in the light when he talked about the Father and I are one. He was seeing through God's eyes. He was engaging through the full awareness of God as him. He was living from what some would term his true self, his spiritual self, still being able to have this human experience. The author suggests that there are really three big myths that oftentimes stand in the way, that create some kind of block from us being able to really engage in that awareness of who we are as God beings, as spirited beings. And the first myth that he talks about is that somehow that you're captive inside of your body. We identify with this thing that is the vehicle from which we are here to experience life. The author asks us this: can you feel yourself inside your head looking out at the world? Can you feel yourself taking in the sights, the sounds, the tastes, the smells, all of the input that the body receives? That awareness can seem pretty convincing that we are definitely seated inside, a part of, intricately connected with our bodies. But consider this. See if this could be true, that you really aren't inside your head at all. You are not your emotions. You might be having emotions, but you are not those emotions. Both your body and your mind are simply what he calls zones of awareness. They are the awareness areas that we have, at least in part, to be able to have an experience, an interaction with this life that we're engaged in. And when the two zones of awareness are separate, i.e. the body and the mind, we see as two separate things, the body having pain, having disease, having all sorts of things going on in it, and the mind filled with fear and worry and all of those other thoughts that run through it. And so he suggests that the only way we really get beyond this myth, beyond this experience that we are somehow physical in our bodies or that we are somehow products of our thoughts and our emotions, is to withdraw from them. The only way we really know that that is not us is when we no longer allow ourselves to the best of our abilities to be engaged in that. Now, you may be asking, well, how do you do that? How do you, thoughts are going through the head all the time, senses are picking up input from the outer world all the time. How can you not see and feel and think about the world around you? But I want you to consider this. We do it all the time. We may not be aware of it, but we do it all the time. We tune out, is the vernacular we would probably use, stuff that's happening to us. I know any of you in a relationship have experienced this when you're talking to the person in the room with you and you've said something really important and then they go, huh, what, were you talking to me? Now, the person that was sitting there was aware that words were being spoken. They were aware that there were sounds in the room. Their ears were picking, but they just simply chose, they were engaged in something else and chose not to hear. Or, as my husband likes to say, oh, I didn't think you were talking to me. It's like, we're the only two in the room. Who else would I be? Well, you might have been talking to the TV. Or when our cat was alive, I thought you were talking to the cat. We do it with what we take in visually. I don't know if you've ever had this experience. It freaked me out the first time I did, of driving down the road, and like 30 minutes later, I realize I've just gone 30 miles and have really no recollection of driving. Usually in long trips this happens. You're on the highway for a long time, and eventually, the eyes are seeing it, but it's not part of what's mentally being processed right now. You're off in your own thoughts. You're thinking about other things. You've been there, and hopefully, at least at some instinctual level, you're paying attention to your lane in the road, but you're not present. You're not aware in the moment of it. So when we can do this consciously, intentionally, that we have a greater experience of knowing that we're neither body or are we a brain. Those are part of our experience. There are things that allow us to have an awareness of this physical plane we're on, but the I of us is neither of those things. I think that's why prayer and meditation tend to be so important in our lives, because that's the moment that we'll step away, that we'll sort of step away from all of the sensory input that's coming in, and hopefully, when we practice for a while, even step away from those incessant thoughts and emotions that are running through our body. It gives us a moment to just tap into that self, that eternal self, that energy of light that is who we are at the very core of our being. The second myth that he talks about is that you were created out of matter. This has really given rise and become a very integral part of how what our worldview is, because science has now shown how, matter even began, the Big Bang Theory, or, understanding how matter has expanded and manifested through the eons of time. Our faith tells us that infused in all matter is this all-embracing, intelligent creator. That at the very essence of every bit of matter, there is an intelligence. Many argued for centuries that we know God exists because of the intelligent unfolding of the earth and of the universe. It just doesn't seem random and chaotic, that there is something that's driving all of creation into a certain direction. That intelligence is alive. It's alive in our bodies. It's alive in our minds. It is the essence of our spirit, and it is the very heart of everything. So there may be physicalness that we experience it by, but it is not matter in itself. It is just God's stuff being formed in different ways. As conscious beings, we have the ability to govern matter. This has been through one of our truth principles, through our thoughts, our feelings, our beliefs. We have the power to co-create what our experience looks like. Those who have been devoted to yoga and this path that Deepak Chopra is exposing us to, what are called the Patanjali, I'm hoping I say that correctly, who created these Yoga Sutras, and these have been around since hundreds of years BC. So these are ancient in the evolution of our humanness. They are able to have total dominion and direct their body's heartbeats, their body temperature, their breath. They can almost bring it down to zero and still be what we would say is physically impossible, and still be alive, still be an essence of being, even though their bodies may be at a very dormant level. There are many different festivals where they come to demonstrate their mastery over matter. Sometimes it's by doing things that seem otherworldly with objects. Sometimes it is doing things to their bodies that most of us would think is just downright crazy. I don't know if you've ever seen, and Kenny, if you've got those pictures up there, laying on a bed of nails, sleeping, or putting big piercings through their bodies with no anesthetic, with no blood. They are just able to make these things happen by control and dominion over their bodies. I touched this body-mind experience a few times when I walked on hot coals. Anybody else ever done a fire walking experience? We're gonna have to have one here. I'm gonna make that happen. It is one of those things that seems impossible, that you could walk on coals, and trust me, we built the fire. We watched as that fire burned down and just became red hot coals, that you can walk across it and not get burned. Some people have the mastery to stand for minutes, for long periods of time. I didn't do it. I walked rather quickly across the coals, but I did it multiple times. It was almost like I had to do it multiple times in order for the rest of my consciousness to realize you can do that. And it wasn't something that you just get up and go walk and do it. Anybody, if you ever go to one of these, you spend the day preparing. You spend the day preparing your mind and your physical being to get in that space where you know that it's possible to do that. We meditated. We released fears There's a whole process to go through so that you can stand there. And then we were still told, I don't know how many of you remember Edwene Gaines, but I did this at her retreat several times over the years. She would say, but if you don't believe it, if by the time you get down to it and you don't believe you can walk across there and not get burned, don't do it. Because if you don't believe that you can't not get burned, you will get burned. We will be having to go off to the emergency room with someone. So it's such a dominion over this thinking brain part of you, the emotional part of you, and the body part of you, but it's possible. And it is one way to say, boy, if that's possible, what else is possible? The third myth that he says that we need to overcome, and this kind of goes along with it, is that somehow your brain is doing the thinking. How many of you think that, well, yeah, it's my brain that's processing the thoughts? Well, your brain is just made up of a bunch of chemicals, like every other cell in your body. It has no special cells, other than it has developed the capacity to process thoughts and emotions and what's happening in the outer world. But the brain cells themselves only are a transmitter. They have no power to think any thoughts themselves. They have no power to create. The creation, the thoughts, the emotions are coming from that true self, that you that lives in this physical being. Your brain is just the place that has the capacity to take that thought and let it run across a level of awareness for you. The brain simply reflects the consciousness of what you are believing or what you are thinking in any given moment. And the more that we can stay in the light, the more illumined our thoughts and our emotions become, the more that reflects through what gets processed through this gray matter that we call our brain. So I want to invite you to just take a moment as we move into a time of meditation and bring your senses. Try and just bring all of your attention inward. You may hear sounds being played during this. You may be aware of my voice speaking, but just bring your attention. That's why closing your eyes can sometimes be really helpful, to block out all of this external stimuli and bring your awareness to that self that lives inside this body, to that self that animates our thoughts and our experiences. You might want to just take a deep breath just to bring yourself fully into this time and this space and this remembrance. Sometimes it's helpful to remember those moments that we've glimpsed or been able to bask in that light, however briefly, where you felt that full sense of unconditional love, when you saw such beauty that you knew there was something so much more than what this human experience was informing you around, where compassion for yourself and for others was the fullness of your being. Don't force it, just allow that true you to bring to your awareness in this moment, to remember what that felt like, what that experience awakened within you. And just let these pleasant feelings and memories wash over you. Feel that fullness of God's light illuminating all that is present in this moment. Allow that natural sense of gratitude for those glimpses and those moments and the call to live in this space more and more often. Silently just say to yourself, nothing is more real than this. In fact, this is the only enduring reality. If others rise up, just let them come. Feel that sense of joy that they brought when first experienced. Now imagine that light as it is filling up the space that you physically occupy, spilling out beyond those physical bounds into this room. And as those beams of light join together, they move beyond this building and spill out into the community, lighting a path, even for just a moment, of all of those who feel that wave of love washing over them. And then send it around the world, out into the universe, as it flows right back to us. Know that you can return to this space of awareness of the light in your life anytime you set your intention and create the space and the time to do that. And whenever you're ready, bring your attention back to this time and space, aware once again of this earth suit that you occupy and the sounds in the room. And whenever you're ready, you can open your eyes. You know, one of the hardest things to grasp at times is that staying in the light doesn't require any great effort on our part. We always think we gotta, if we just give it a little more effort, if we just try a little harder. It really is more about allowing. And it's about allowing that awareness to be present as often as we can as we go out throughout our day. And he suggests that there's some actions that we can take to help shift our awareness, shift our attitude, shift our field of being in order to welcome this light in more often. The first thing he suggests is notice any glimpses of light that you experience. Be on the lookout. Make that an intention of the day. I'm going to go through this day looking for those moments of love and of compassion and of joy. Again, how we focus our awareness is how we process all of the stuff that's coming in and the thoughts that show up. And then really be in that experience, rest in it, let it soak in. Don't just be oh, that was nice, and then we go back to, all right, now I gotta deal with all of the other stuff going on. But just to be present in it and value it. Feel grateful for those glimpses of light. And simply set your mind and your heart to want to be more conscious, more aware, each and every day, more and more. Because as we set our intention to do that, just like if we set an intention to be aware of every issue and problem and they present themselves, it's just a shift of our focus and our attention. Depending upon where you might be in your life's journey right now, it may seem like a total impossibility to live in the light. Or perhaps it's even a challenge to catch glimpses of it. And yet, we know that it's possible. We follow the living demonstration of what it looks like to live in the light through the master teacher, Jesus. It reminds us, we're told that all things are possible. We may not be able to have that experience right now, but as we open to those possibilities, it's there. We are that co-creative intelligence with God, that we have the capacity to create. If our history has told us nothing else, and we look at the miracle, once we have learned how to master co-creating what our lives look like now compared to 50 years ago, 100 years ago, let alone 5,000 years ago. It's amazing. We just need to shift it now to co-create more light. It's interesting that the Genesis story starts with, "Let there be light." And notice it doesn't say, "I'm making the light, time for you to show up." It was let. And the very word let means allow. So this is really about allowing. Let there be light. Let that light. We don't have to make it happen. We just have to allow it to show up. So my prayer for each of us, what was that? What are you laughing about? My prayer for each of us is that throughout our day, that we become aware that we are those conscious co-creators with God. And we remember, as we say, let there be light. What we are really opening up to is let there be more joy, let there be peace, let there be love, let there be compassion in this very moment. Well, it is the first Sunday in November, so as we prepare to share of our tithes and our gifts and our love offerings with this ministry, we also use this Sunday to remind you that we are still working on our loan reduction. So if you're able to give a little extra towards that, so far, as of the end of September, we have paid back $18,598. So that's a pretty good start over several months. So it'll be an ongoing opportunity for us as we are blessed to maybe give a little extra to bless that fund. And we don't have the exact numbers yet, but wanted to just make you aware for our birthday banquet, I think it's around $4,200 is what we're gonna end up making as a profit from that event. And that money will go to paying off the third air conditioner that went out that we didn't take any loan money from, but we're gonna trust and have faith that somehow we can make that $10,000 payment. So we're finishing paying it off. They gratefully let us pay it off because we're such a good customer. And we've blessed mightily our AC company here in the last couple of years. And finally, just to make you aware that we have a few silent auction items. This is the last Sunday that we are going to be allowing people to make a bid on those. They're at the back of the sanctuary. They're all art related. So that is another opportunity if you'd like to bless our community by bidding on and taking home one of those items. So there's an abundance of ways for us to receive our good, and we're just grateful for all the channels to which it flows into this community as we join and bless the gifts today. Together, divine love, through me, blesses and multiplies all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive.
All right, so why don't we all stand up? Let's join hands and we can do our peace song together.
And so as we go into this day, into this week, declaring, let there be light, we go, knowing our prayer for protection together. The light of God surrounds us. I am the light of God. The love of God enfolds us. I am the love of God. The power of God protects us. I am the power of God. The presence of God watches over us. I am the presence of God. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well.